All right, so I want to get right into this because this is such a cool story. Okay, and it's amazing because, like, we all go down different paths
Yeah,
in life, and you never know what the Lord's going to throw at you.
sure.
But you got to have an open heart, open mind,
Yeah,
and you got to listen.
Yeah.
Right. So you are a classically trained pianist. I love it when you just get on there and just go nuts online and just, I mean, seriously, you can do stuff with a classical hymn, and it's magical.
wow. Okay.
It's magical. I just love it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So a classically trained pianist, and you're on your way to Juilliard, like 17 years old, give or take?
Yeah, 15, 16, that's where I was headed. Yeah, I was trained by a Juilliard professor. My mom was also a piano teacher. She was like a French. She taught French in college, and all my other siblings, I watched them take French, and I was like, I ain't taking French because of mom. Like she is just a militant, and that's how she was with me with piano. So I would play 2-3 hours a day. We had this window in our house, and I would watch kids playing football and, soccer and wiffle ball and all that. And I'm like in there practicing classical music. So she was training me, man. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I did love it, and I seemed to have a gift at it. My teacher would put something in front of me, and I would say, you play it first. And as long as he played it, I could play it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I had an ear for music, and I knew I was going to do music full time. That's for sure. And my parents really wanted me to go down the road of going to Juilliard and being a classical pianist. And honestly, I just, I didn't know if that was the role I was going to play. And I love music, and I didn't know how much I liked soul music and R&B and funk music and all that. But I was headed down that road. My dad had a quadruple bypass. We were talking about this earlier, and life just kind of shifted for me. They moved to Florida, and I was 17 years old. Never really done anything on my own without them. Mm-hmm. And so I had to go to an eye doctor. So I didn't even know how to do that. So I'm like looking up how the heck I go to an eye doctor. Mm-hmm. I go to an eye doctor as a Jewish man, and he's like, "What do you do?" I was like, "I'm a concert pianist. I perform at senior citizen like places, and I go wherever I can go, but I'm headed to Juilliard. That's where I'm going." He's like, "Really?" He's like, "That's amazing." He goes, I love classical music. He goes, "My father-in-law is Burt Padell. Have you ever heard of him?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Well, in New York, he's like a big deal. You never heard of Burt Padell?" I'm like, "No, what does he do?" He's an entertainment accountant, Al Pacino, Madonna, a lot of celebrities and baseball players and all this stuff, musicians. And he goes, "How about if I set up a meeting where you can go meet with Burt and, just see what happens?" And I was like, "Okay, cool. But am I still going to get my contacts?" So that was wild, but to me, I look back now and it was like just kind of God orchestrating things.
There it is.
And I can't even tell you how many times I felt like a mouse in a maze. Didn't really understand what I was doing in life, but somehow I stumbled upon this and stumbled upon that, and I'm here. And it wasn't like a straight path ever. It was always zigzag, and a drop and a twist and a turn and a pivot. And that's how life has always been, at least for me.
That's right.
So I'm, 2 weeks later, sitting in front of Burt, like I am with you. And he's like, "So tell me, what do you do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm like a concert pianist, And he goes, He goes, "So you're real smart." And I'm like, "No, I wouldn't say I'm smart, but I can play classical music." And he goes, "Okay, well," he goes, "I have this one client of mine. His name's Ira Schickman. He's a R&B funk producer. He's really, best friends with Stevie Wonder, and he knows a lot of people. He's like, he has a penthouse in Midtown off 34th. He goes like, would you work with him?" And I was like, "I'll work with anybody. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to do." He goes, "You guys will figure that out." So I started, meeting with Ira, and man, dude's like 6'6", walks with a cane. His fingernails are painted, striped like Steven Tyler of Aerosmith. And he's just a wild dude. And he talks and acts like Snoop Dogg.
Okay.
He's got blonde, long hair. I mean, he's just an interesting creature. So, and he does this like Stevie. And so I'm around him, and he's just real artsy. And he's like, "Play something for me." So I sit down at the piano and I play this Chopin piece. And he's like, "My man, my man." And then he makes hip hop beats behind stuff I'm doing and all this. anyway, we just really hit it off. But a funny story is it was his birthday, and I used to commute from New Jersey, and I go and I work with him. He goes, go get the door, because the doorbell rang, and I open the door, and I thought it was an impersonator. Dude's like, looks like Stevie, and doing that, and it was really Stevie Wonder.
No.
Yeah, totally, really him.
Holy
And
cow.
his brother's no longer with us, but it was his brother who always, would travel with him. And so he's like, I'm Stevie. Is Ira here? And I was like, yeah, Ira's here. Yeah, Ira's here. I'm like, Ira, Stevie's here.
Yeah.
But it was really him. And it was insane, man. I was like just a fly on the wall all day. Like just whatever they needed, I would, but I'm like working the computer and acting like I was doing something important. Meanwhile, I'm watching them jam together. Stevie's drinking a little glass of Merlot, and he's playing the drums. And then he goes over to the keyboard, and then he picks up a guitar. Just crazy that I was in that room. I didn't have the credentials. I had no business being there. I didn't have the resume. But again, like that's how I look back at my life with God. Like it was favor, really. I mean, I shouldn't have been in that room. I had no business being in that room, but somehow I'm there.
That's right.
And yeah, it chokes me up now to really think about it, because that's just how our God is, right?
Absolutely. Well, and there's so much there that we could unpack, because like just when you get there, you still you have to be aware.
Yeah.
And then you have to be aware of why God put you there, and then what the outcome needs to be.
And I wasn't really sure.
Yeah.
And even to this day, I don't really know what my role was there, but we wrote some great music together, worked with some great artists. A lot of people probably know some of those artists, but one of them was like Justin Timberlake. And so it was just really cool that he brought me in on a lot of that. But he also, like, that was my college. He taught me how to record. One time, Bootsy Collins, I don't know if you're ever familiar, but Bootsy, like, would always wear real funky hats and stuff. And
That's right.
Like star glasses. And, he loved to play bass. And so one time he came over, and after the session was done, I go back to the computer, and my classical nature took over, and I'm like, okay, I have got to like edit this and edit that and take out the amp sound and the hiss and all this. And so Ira comes back after hanging with Bootsy, and comes back and he goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm cleaning it up. He goes, you don't clean up Bootsy's bass. You leave that grit and that funk and all that, the amp sound and all that. You leave all that in there. And I was like, oh, okay, man. All right. So it was like School of Hard Knocks. It's how I learned to record. And now, like, I mean, I love to produce. I love the behind the scenes. I have a studio, and I don't think I ever would have discovered all of that without Ira in my life. I mean, he was a really loyal cat, and he wasn't a believer, but loved gospel music, loved Kim Burrell, loved Kirk Franklin and James Cleveland and choir music. And, I would get to the studio, and he'd just be like soaking all that up. You ever hear this? I'm like, yeah, man, I was actually like just with this person last week. He's like, he just loved that I was in that gospel world.
Wow.
But he just couldn't commit to what that meant to be a believer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, it's, there's so many things that I've learned that we're going to talk about today about how to feed your faith and how that can spill over into, how it will spill over into all aspects of your life, right? But, another thing that, especially as an athlete, there was a couple things that I learned once I got to the professional ranks, and that was, one, you don't get called up to the next level unless you're doing things that, what's the saying? You don't get called up to the big leagues unless you're doing big league things already.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? So obviously they put you in that room because you were doing something special.
I guess.
Okay. You know what I'm saying? Because they just don't put...
I mean, I could play really well, and I still, I'm very humble when it comes to my gift, because I don't feel like it's mine. It's like on loan. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
And I was taught by my dad and my mom, like, really honestly, I was never good enough, because anytime I played classical music, my mom would always hear on measure 38 the one mistake I did.
Yeah.
And so that's what they would focus on. So not that I'm a people pleaser, but I just always feel like, I've never hit the level in my mind of what perfection is, because I'm not perfect.
That's right.
And I strive to be, and I know I'm not, but my level of what I think is decent is not the same level as what a lot of other people think is great.
when you chase perfection, you'll stumble upon excellence, right? You'll stumble upon excellence.
Yeah. But I've learned, like, even like with David in the Bible, like those people that have that mentality, who have potential to be great or have a great gift or are perfectionists, that can make you or break you. It can be trippy in your mind. You can always be negative and always feel like you're not good enough, or always feel like, I could have done that better or whatever. So you kind of have to keep a grip on it, or you'll never be happy. But it also can drive you. I've met a lot of successful people in music and business, whatever, and it drives them. Their level for the bar, even probably your level for a bar, is not your average person's level.
Heck no.
But you could also live in very unhappiness and not be happy, or you can just be like, hey, I gave it my all, whatever. But it's tough to be a perfectionist because you're never really hitting the bar you want to be.
How much, being around those guys that first time, being around all the amazing folks and successful folks that you've been able to collaborate and do things with, right? So again, every time when I leveled up in sports, like my game, I leveled up once I got there because of the people around me, the proximity.
Yeah.
Right? I fed off them.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
They showed me something that I knew was possible, but like seeing it is kind of believing it to a certain degree. And like I saw it and I'm like, hey, I can do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How much did like that day that, like when you're talking about that, when you show up and there's freaking Stevie freaking Wonder, like how much did that change like what you knew that you could do? You know what I mean? How far you could go, and because sometimes the moment will be too big. Yeah. But sometimes you're in that moment and you're like, oh yeah, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. Well,
I learned so many things being around different people, and I'm the type of person that anyone that's not just successful, but somebody I look up to and like, I am a positive person, so I'm going to find a positive rather than the negative. I'm sure there are other people out there that are like, oh man, I wish I never met this idol of mine or whatever, because they act this way or they do that. I'm not that type of person. I'm going to find something great, and okay, that's why I like them. Whether it be their music or something that they did. And one thing about Stevie's all about feel. He can't see, and he's all just about feeling the music. And Ira, who is my friend and also co-producer that we worked together, was all about feel. And so classical music is about feel, but it's also about memorization and repetition and, playing it exactly how, the genius that wrote it. Yeah. And so one thing I loved about soul music and R&B and funk is it was written and birthed out of people's pain, out of people's hurt, out of people's, interaction with other people that maybe was or was not fair. And then their response to it was through a song. And a lot of it was an encouraging word or just their way to be happy and encouraged, even though they felt miserable and, whatever they were going through in life. And so I really catered to that because I love music that moves you, whether it's country or R&B or funk or, gospel music or even classical. But I learned that regardless that you need to feel it. Like don't just play it, feel it. So that I always remember that was one thing Ira always said, don't just play it, feel it,
Yeah, man.
And so like, that's one thing I learned from them, but I've learned so many things, like from that people in that world that weren't even believers or Christians. Yes. They were good people.
Absolutely. You want to surround yourself again, raising kids.
Yeah. If
your kid's hanging out with a troublemaker all the time, you're like, hey man, don't hang out with him. You know what I mean? But as adults, we don't really do that.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know if it's a saying, but like you hang out with dogs, you might wake up with fleas. The people that you consume but like my nature is to, if I'm going down a certain path, I'm going to find somebody that's already killing it in that path.
That's right.
Somebody I look up to, somebody that's, winning, and I'm going to learn from them. I'm not going to take advice from somebody that's not winning and keeps failing and keeps losing. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, but a lot of us actually do that in life.
Man.
It's like, my dad always said there's two people. There's smart people that are like book smart, which is my son. We were talking like my son's a math genius, and he's only like 15.
Wow.
But he's really dumb when it comes to street smarts.
Yeah.
There's like, there's book smart and street smart. And
absolutely.
My dad taught me a lot of the street smart, I guess, because he came from Brooklyn, New York, and,
yeah,
wanted to make sure that I could like I knew what right and wrong was and how to treat people and communicate with people and be honest and authentic.
Authentic. That's an awesome word, because I've had some amazing people share the studio with me.
Yeah,
and that's one of the most common words amongst successful people.
Authentic.
Authentic. Yeah. Authenticity.
Even in my world with preachers, I mean, we've tried to sit on a stool and, to be life coaches. And we've tried the, yelling and screaming in the old school black gospel, style. I mean, but I think this generation that's coming up just wants authenticity. They just want somebody that's real and honest, talks about their hurt and their pain, and shares the Bible.
Absolutely.
I mean, you kind of, if you go to church, you want to hear the Bible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.